Phalaenopsis is one of the main fillies that was part of the Golden Generation. She was sired by the legendary sire Brian's Time, meaning that she shares the same sire as many other Musume, including Narita Bryan, Mayano Top Gun, Tenino Gimlet, Dantsu Flame, No Reason, Furioso, as well as other big names including Sunny Bryan, Silk Justice, Minor Max, and Time Paradox. Her dam sire was also Stormcat, another legendary sire who produced winners including Giant's Causeway, Cat Thief, and Tabasco Cat. This means her lineage was connected with the likes of Northern Dancer, Secretariat, and Rebo. Needless to say, Phalaenopsis' pedigree looked to be very promising. With that said, Phalaenopsis' upbringing was actually very difficult. When she was born, she had a very weak build that looked nothing like a future superstar. Her bones were very fragile, especially on her legs. She would catch colds too easily, and she would even feel anxious towards other horses when forced into a group environment. It would be through her trainer, Mitsumasa Hamada, where she would slowly develop into the horse that she was meant to be despite the odds being stacked against her. Hamada utilized a bubble wrap form of training for Phalaenopsis, meaning that instead of using traditional training methods, she would be put under unique training regimens to help boost her confidence while also protecting her legs. That's why her debut race in 1997 was a Hanshin dirt race as a test to showcase her newly found physical maturity, and she won decisively with little issue. Her next race would also result in a victory, showing that she's slowly coming to form. There was a lot of hype surrounding Phalaenopsis going into her 1998 season, with the intention of racing in the Triple Tiara races. She won the Elfin Stakes on the Kyoto racecourse in convincing fashion. She would face a roadblock, however, in the Tulip Show. She was boxed and surrounded by multiple horses, which more than likely contributed to her disappointing performance in the race, and ended up placing 4th behind Dantsu Sirius. After the race, Phalaenopsis' jockey, Shigeru Ishiyama, would be replaced by the one and only Yutaka Take going into the Oka Show and the rest of the Triple Tiara races. She was going into the Oka Show as the 3rd overall favorite, stemming from her Tulip Show loss. This was the first race where she wasn't the overall favorite, with Dantsu Sirius taking that spotlight instead. When the race started, Take rode Phalaenopsis in a very comfortable pace near the other horses, and in the final straight, found the opening needed to go on the outside and blazed past the other horses in the last moment to win the Oka Show. It was an absolute masterclass in tactical riding that showcased Phalaenopsis' strengths as a gritty late surger, while also acknowledging her weakness of racing too close to other horses. The crowd erupted in excitement to potentially see the birth of a potential Triple Tiara winner. Those wishes, however, would be dashed when Phalaenopsis raced in the Japanese Oaks and was overtaken by an overlooked underdog named Erimo XL. She ultimately placed a valiant 3rd in the race behind Erimo XL and Air Deja Vu. It was believed that the 2,400 meter distance may have been a little much for her at the time. Despite the Oaks loss, Phalaenopsis was able to bounce back with a victory in the G2 Rose Stakes and a very close nose finish to Biwa Good Luck. To cap off her 1998 season, she would compete in the final leg of the Triple Tiara, the Shuka Show, against a pretty stacked lineup including Erimo XL, Air Deja Vu, and Egao Umisete. She stuck to her late surging style and went stride for stride with Egao Umisete in the final straight, and was able to win by a length and a half, becoming a double Tiara winner with her Oka Show and Shuka Show victories. All this to say, her 1988 season was a massive success, and she has cemented her place in the history books as a gritty late surger. However, going into 1999, it seemed like her form would struggle against the rest of the Golden Generation and other star-studded competitors, combined with her claustrophobia coming back to haunt her in full force. Starting her 1999 season, she placed 10th in the G2 Milers Cup behind Egao Umisete. Then afterwards, she would be put into an absolute dogfight in the KO High Spring Cup, where Grass Wonder and Air Jihad dominated the race, but was still able to place 5th. Her biggest performance of the year, however, was in the G2 Sapporo Keenan against Seiyun Sky, another fellow Golden Generation member and also a Double Crown winner in his own right, after winning the Satsuki Show and Kika Show, making this race an epic Double Crown showdown. Other standout names in the race included Machikane Fukukitaru, Erimo XL, Midnight Bet, Silent Hunter, and Daiwa Texas. Phalaenopsis brought her absolute best in the race, using her late surging abilities to try and keep up with the front-running Seiyun Sky. but it was just not enough, and she had to settle for second by half a length. Despite the loss, the performance was highly praised, especially considering that Saiyan Sky gave it his all to hold the line until the end. It showed that Phalaenopsis still had enough fighting spirit in her to contend with a fellow Golden Generation member. However, it would not translate as well in the 1999 Queen Elizabeth, where she went up against another stacked field of familiar opponents, including Arimo Excel and Egao Misete, as well as rising star filly Fusaichi Airedale, and the veteran Meijiro Dober, who's already won the Queen Elizabeth a year prior, and is looking for her own redemption story as well after a few setbacks combined with this race being her retirement race. Phalaenopsis entered as the first overall favorite in the race, but sadly couldn't keep up with Meijiro Dober's experienced stride and finished 6th. To cap off her 1999 season, she would be placed in the epic grand finale, the 1999 Arima Keenan, going up against a lineup so stacked that it is beyond suffocating. Grass Wonder, Special Week, Tiamapra O, Suramaru Tsuyoshi, Narita Top Road, Meijiro Bright, Stay Gold, Fusaichi Airedale, Yusei Top Run, Symboli Indy. The odds were so stacked against her, and she would ultimately be a victim of being surrounded by such juggernauts in the race that she faded to 8th place. At this point, Phalaenopsis wasn't even in the discussion after the race. While everyone was in awe of the epic photo finish between Grass Wonder and Special Week, Phalaenopsis' camp was simply overwhelmed and devastated by the result, leading to the belief that Phalaenopsis was simply past her prime and unable to win in the same double tiara winning form she showed the previous year. Regardless, she would continue racing in 2000, and after 2 more crushing defeats, it would be announced that the 2000 Queen Elizabeth would be her final race before retiring. There were little to no expectations for her to win the race. She hasn't won a race in almost 2 whole years, but there were still some who longed for that same powerful late surge that she showed in her prime back in 1998. Going up against younger and brighter competition, including To The Victory and Umino Fiber, as well as a familiar opponent in Fusaichi Airedale, who placed 2nd in the previous year's race. Phalaenopsis would forego her usual late surging style in favor of a pace-chasing style right behind To The Victory and Fusaichi Airedale, and would begin to slowly but gradually catch up to them in the final straight and win her 3rd G1 in her final race against all odds. It was as storybook of an ending as it could get for her, and it truly showcased her unstoppable fighting spirit, giving her fans one last hurrah before being put out to pasture. It remains one of the most legendary comebacks in history, completely breaking the filly slump stigma, and acts as a blueprint for future filly comebacks, including Stunning Rose. I can imagine her personality in Musume. Hey guys, it's future me, and yes, before we continue, I just gotta say, yes, I have seen the latest Paka Live stream, and I have seen the latest announcement that Phalaenopsis actually is in Musume. So, this next part is gonna be me explaining what I would imagine the character would be like if they were to be put in Musume. But now that she actually is in Musume, whether I was right on the money here, I'll let y'all be the judge. Alright, moving on, here we go. I can imagine her personality in Musume being somewhat of a mix between Curran-chan and Daiwa Scarlet. Phalaenopsis was known for having a bit of a diva-esque personality in the stables and during training, especially in regards of her rough past and history of physical ailments and fear of large groups. She would have that radiant princess energy with a flower motif, fitting of her name, while also being very claustrophobic when being involved in large groups, which is why she prefers to have a small but dedicated friend group with each of the Golden Generation members, especially Saiyan Sky due to her more relaxed personality and their overall similarities of their rough upbringings and being double crown winners. She can also be inspired and really close to Narita Bryan and Biwa Hayahide, which could be a reference to her sire. Her story would purely focus on her trying to regain her double tiara winning form and going against the rest of the Golden Generation despite all the odds being stacked against her, and showing her more tender side. Beneath the anxious princess persona is a very dedicated and determined fighter, showcasing her late surging abilities to emphasize that her spirit is beyond unbreakable even when all the odds are stacked against her. It's honestly a very nice underdog story in her own right that kind of almost reminds me of Ogre Cap to an extent, which is why her Queen Elizabeth victory is so great after such a long slump. In a way, I can totally see Phalaenopsis relating to MJDerby in that aspect too, not only because of them being Queen Elizabeth winners, but also because of the sheer determination that they have to keep going despite all the odds stacked against them, and despite their ongoing slump, which makes their Queen Elizabeth victories all the more worthwhile. And I think it can also hit hard considering that other Golden Generation members like Saiyan Sky, Grass Wonder, and Tsutomaru Tsuyoshi never really got that grand finale after the 1999 era was over. I think I could totally see her having an OVA depicting her 2000 Queen Elizabeth victory, especially long after the Golden Generation saga has concluded. I definitely think there's something there for Phalaenopsis, which is why I think she's an important asset to the Golden Generation story.